What's up, everybody? I'm Peter Martin, and you are listening to and experiencing the business side of music.
Do you understand the words that are coming out of my mouth?
Quiet, numbskulls, I'm broadcasting.
Can we get serious now?
One thing that did happen during the 60s was some music of an unusual or experimental nature did get recorded and did get released. Now look at who the executives were in those companies at those times. Not hip young guys. These were cigar-chomping old guys who looked at the product that came and said, I don't know. Who knows what it is? Record it, stick it out. If it sells, all right. We were better off with those guys than we are now with the supposedly hip young executives who are making the decisions of what people should see and hear in the marketplace.
Success in the music business begins with a dream, a vision. This podcast will give you, the listener, the insight and tools to turn that vision into a reality. Meet the industry professionals who work day by day behind the scenes, helping to make those dreams come true. Welcome to the business side of music.
I always love when this gentleman, I'm going to just call you a co-contributor, because that's really what you are.
Well, it's an honor.
You're no longer a guest, so just,
I'm a guy that comes around on a regular basis.
And shares your wisdom. Jack Sharkey is joining us. Of course, those that know, Jack and I co-produced a series called Between the Notes, and we've now extended that over into the business side of music. So this is a special Between the Notes segment of the business side of music. And we really just talk about what's on our heart, what's in our minds and our souls.
News of the day, attitude of the day, what might be going on, something that we're, top of mind.
We might talk about Jell-O pudding. You never know.
We could.
Yeah.
Doesn't, you don't get a lot of information with a Jell-O pudding podcast. And in fact, the ones that we've done, we've shelved, but I get your point.
Yeah. Well, we use it if we need an episode.
It's like a rehearsal.
Can't get anything else out. It's always good to have you in the studio.
And it's great to be here, man. I haven't been here in a long time. I've been on the road. I've been doing a lot of things.
You went to England?
I was in Jolly Old, or Old Blighty, as they call it. I got to do a really cool thing, and that was be involved with the world premiere of David Bowie's Ziggy Stardust and the Spiders from Mars album, which was remixed in Atmos, right? So full surround sound, if you will, and Dolby Atmos. And that was just really exciting with the original producer of the album, Ken Scott, and the folks from the David Bowie estate were involved in that. And that was just really, really grand fun. So that's what I did for part of June. Yeah.
And you have been a traveling Wilbury of sorts.
So, yeah, man. And it's...
some of it good, some of it...
Some of it good, some of it bad. Yeah, but some of it... but it all falls under the category of that's the way this year is going, and it's just life.
Well,
yeah.
And we're going to talk about just life and what's going on in the music business these days. In fact, we're seeing a bit of a transition in the music business, I think. You and I had a conversation before we started recording in that stadium shows are not necessarily the end-all. Why are acts not filling large venues these days?
And is it a bad thing?
Right.
Is it necessarily a barometer of the health of the music industry that acts are not filling stadiums up? And I have a really interesting take on that, because I don't think that it necessarily is a bad thing.
Well, and of course, depending on where you get your news and who the band's publicist is and how they spin it, that can go in several different directions. I'm going to jump to the Black Keys, who were going to play arenas and couldn't really sell them out. In fact, they were about half to two-thirds full. And the bottom line these days, it's so tight. It's so difficult to make money in the live concert music business because the overhead is it's ridiculous. You have everything from trucking to labor to insurance. I understand insurance costs have gone way up. It's getting more difficult all the time for acts to make money. And I've talked about this in the past. Dweezil Zappa, Frank Zappa's son, who wants to go on tour is selling off some of his guitars just to pay for the overhead to get started. That's a sad commentary on life.
Yeah, and at that point, what's the point? Just to sell so much money to make some money or possibly lose some money. Famously, Roger Daltrey talked about the fact that the stadium show is a moot point at this point because it's too expensive to do. But so this is 2024. It's not 1986, right? It's not 1996. And maybe just things are different now. And there's something that we don't talk about is I am not spending $350 a pop, $700 for my wife and I to go see a show, and then in parking and this, that, and the other thing. So not only have the stadium shows maybe gotten too expensive, but they've priced themselves out of the market. That, to me, just says that we're doing it wrong. It's like in your own personal life with your own finances and stuff. Like if you're constantly broke or you're constantly this, you're constantly that, well, you're doing something wrong, right? And maybe it's your fault. Maybe it's not your fault. Maybe it's just what life has brought to your door, but you've got to adjust to that. So if you're the Black Keys or you're J-Lo and you're not selling out an arena, a hockey arena or a football stadium, instead of blaming everybody else in the world, maybe you look at it and go like, maybe it's not my time round. Maybe I'm not peak J-Lo at this point, and I don't have the interest garnered in what I'm doing, right? Maybe my tickets are too high. Well, if my ticket costs are too high, maybe my show's too expensive, maybe I need to cut it back down. The Ryman is selling out nightly.
Yes, it is.
Nightly. And one of my favorite new bands, I wanted to say favorite bands of all time, and they're getting really close to that, Lake Street Dive just did a bunch of small shows. Now, granted, they're playing Madison Square Garden. They're based in Manhattan, but it's a one-off show. It's not a tour. We don't know that they're going to sell it out, but they're selling smaller clubs, across the country, right? So maybe if you can't sell a football stadium, maybe you can sell the Ryman or some smaller venue, the Beacon Theater in New York or something like that. And does that mean that you're not a good musician anymore? See, that's what's bothering me. All of a sudden, are you not valid? If you're Black Keys or you're J-Lo, are you suddenly not worthy as a musician because you can't fit 70,000 fannies in a seat? And I say absolutely not.
I believe, this is my humble opinion, is that there's a certain amount of ego involved.
Precisely.
Oh, I was selling out arenas. I was doing stadium tours. And now I can't do either.
Right.
And I have to play maybe smaller hockey arenas or auditoriums or theaters.
Yeah, sheds in the summertime.
Yeah.
I do 3,500 seats.
Yeah.
It's okay. Yeah.
And that is a tough pill to swallow. I'm not going to name the artist, but a friend of mine is a manager for a rock act.
Okay.
And they have played the larger venues over the years. And they wound up on the shed tour. Now, when we talk about sheds, we're talking about outdoor amphitheaters.
Right.
So and it's the lingo in the business. We call them sheds. And the seating area of the shed was sold, but the grassy area, the grassy knoll,
Okay.
was not.
Okay.
So, as you said, 3,000, 4,000 seats.
Yeah.
When it could conceivably be 6,000, 7,000, 8,000 seats,
Right.
depending on how close you can get the butts together.
Mm-hmm.
And the band walked out, and I found this so interesting. They told my friend who's the manager, they said it felt like we were walking out to an empty house.
That's incredible.
Because that's what they were used to. They were used to this,
Yeah.
being packed. It's a little bit of a mind shift, mind adjustment.
Right.
Now, Taylor Swift, perfect example, can fill out stadiums wherever she goes.
Yeah.
I think Beyonce may be doing that.
The Stones are doing it.
Yeah.
But,
George Strait does it
Yeah.
when he decides he wants to do it.
Right.
But it's not necessarily everybody's cup of tea. I wonder if acts like Usher or Zach Bryan or Aerosmith or Olivia Rodrigo can fill out those types of venues they used to be able to do.
Right. And if let's jump back 35 years or so to to peak rock, peak music business, the end of the 80s, right? The beginning of the 90s, classic rock was starting to kind of
Wayne.
Yeah, right, which is the natural progression of things. But, people were selling stadiums out, but who was selling stadiums out in that day? You had U2, you had Springsteen, you had the Jacksons, And, right off the top of my head, without doing a whole lot of research, I can't think of of a few more. There was not more than 10 acts who were filling out football arenas at that time.
Correct.
Right? Wembley Stadium in London or whatever. So it's not so much that that's not there anymore, because more to your point, it's that the artists had their peak time and are sort of demanding that us, the audience, continue to support them the way that we used to support them. Now, I supported Elton John on one of his first farewell tours, and I dropped, I think, $300 on 2 tickets to do it, and it was a nice show.
$300 for 2 tickets.
$300 for 2.
That's not unrealistic.
Right. So my wife, being a pretty decent Elton John kind of gal, when he came around here, was at Bridgestone last year, maybe 2 years ago, whenever it was. Going to take a look. Let's go see, right? And $700 and something for 2 seats. By the time I'm done going to see a guy play songs that I saw him play 45 years ago, I'm out of $1,000. I'm not doing it. I'll find something on YouTube to watch and get my fix of Elton John for the night.
Or go see a band at a smaller theater.
Right.
Or at a club.
Right. Now, all you classic rockers, I'm going to say something right now. If I was on social media, I'd say unpopular opinion. But, take it for what it is. Guys, the market shifts and people get older and people's priorities shift and new music comes along that's experienced in a different way. And so if you're an act who is insisting that it be 2012 when you could sell out a stadium or whatever, and you're not doing that today, that's not my fault as an audience member, right? I've gone in a different direction. I don't have the money to support your gigantic, tractor trailer truck show with the dancers and the lights and stuff. So if you want me to get out of my house and go see, you've got to sell me something different. Taylor Swift is not normal. And even no matter if it was the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, or the 90s, Taylor Swift would not be a normal run-of-the-mill act. She's a superstar.
Right. She's a phenomenon.
So they just announced this morning that Springsteen's a billionaire. It's taken him almost 50 years to amass that kind of money in the business. He is a one-of-a-kind artist. Name more artists that are like him with his catalog. Maybe you've got Billy Joel, you've got Elton John, you've got a few others, right? Queen, David Bowie, $1 billion for Queen. But that's a catalog for publishing. That's not going out and selling out football stadiums.
No, it's not.
Okay? Those days are over. The economy is not good. The business is not good. And the people who were rabid fans of these acts are old now. We're not going to these shows, right? And the people who are maybe 10 or 20 years younger, that's not their thing. They go maybe as a novelty act or something like that. The Rolling Stones are going to be selling out arenas until we're all dead, and they're still going to be playing. I mean, it's just, I don't even understand the Rolling Stones at this point. I don't get it. I don't understand it, but yet they still do it. But, the Black Keys, I love the Black Keys. I love Dan Auerbach. I just think he's a fabulous musician, right? There's nothing that he's done that I don't like, within reason. So he has to maybe sell 3,500 or 5,000 seat arenas now instead of the big ones.
I love what the press release when they canceled their tour. And, of course, then almost immediately they fired their management, which, whatever. They came back and they said, we are retrofitting our tour to where it's going to be more of a more intimate setting. That tells me you're playing smaller venues. Yeah. It's going to probably going to be somewhat of maybe a little more acoustic show. I don't know.
Sure.
I don't have the blueprint, so I couldn't tell you.
But now let's talk about why that's not a bad thing at all. Because I've been to stadium shows. I've sat 300 yards away from an act in a football stadium and had miserable time because it's these little guys, a half a mile away. I can't see them. It sounds like crap. But I've been at shows of small, lesser known bands or bands that were well known playing smaller arenas and had a wonderful time because music at its very core, and this is where the between the notes part of what we do is coming to the fore, is in and of itself an emotionally intimate experience. I don't know that music was ever designed to be played in a football stadium. That's why now we have to have dancers and pyrotechnics and big stages and all this stuff. That's theatrical to me. And to me personally, it's boring.
It's much like the Romans back in the day in the Colosseum, send out the Christians and now send out the lions.
Yeah.
It was entertainment.
Right.
And you could get tens of thousands of people.
Right.
But it wasn't, well, first of all, it wasn't a musical setting. And that's what it's all about at the end of the day is the musical setting.
What's the music? Yeah.
I'm going to jump in here and say, I won't go see a show at the Bridgestone Arena here in Nashville. A, it's usually too expensive, and I'm a cheap SOB.
Right.
And B, those seats are not comfortable.
Right.
And if you're sitting on the side,
You're turning with
Yeah.
your head hard to the right at 90 degrees, looking at the band all night.
yeah, and then you have a backache. And C, parking. Now, I brought this up earlier before the beginning of the show. The Foo Fighters
Right.
played City Park in New York, and they had to cancel the show, which we can get into that when we talk about, outdoor venues and the perils and the pitfalls that go with that. But parking, and you said to me, oh, no, that's the norm.
Yeah.
But anywhere from $60 to $120 a ticket.
A car to park in a lot.
Yeah, a car. And I got to thinking about wait a second, that's almost the price of the average ticket I would pay to go see a show, period.
Yeah.
And park somewhere downtown Nashville. You're lucky if you can find something for $30,
Mm-hmm.
but they're there if you're willing to walk. So, yes, I think the economics of it all have something to do with what we're talking about here. And with that being said, discussing economics, we're going to get a word in for a couple of our sponsors. And when we come back, we're going to have some more of this enlightening conversation with Jack Sharkey.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Branding. What is it really? It goes by many names: marketing, licensing, and image. When in reality, it's 7 key branding formulas that all need to harmonize perfectly. Mess up just one formula and you have compromised the whole brand build. Dead Horse Branding facilitates all 7 formulas under one roof, building, promoting, and marketing all brands at all different stages of their level. We are a marketing team's dream, and we were built to service talent, artist managers, record labels, independent artists, iconic brands, legacy estates, and startups. Rooted in music and seated across other industries like fashion, various talent, hospitality, authors, interior designers, lifestyle brands, and corporate entities. The 7 branding formulas do not discriminate. 7 branding formulas, all in one swift movement. Sick of beating that dead horse? Come to Dead Horse. Please visit us at deadhorsebranding.com or send us an email to info@deadhorsebranding.com.
As a musician, you have a dream, that vision of what success looks like for you. Though it's not only about the money, money is a part of it. Whether you've been extremely successful or just striving to maintain a regular cash flow, you need a plan. Money Concepts can help you develop a customized plan to achieve the financial stability and success you want. For over 40 years, Money Concepts has been providing holistic financial planning services to individuals, families, and business owners. As an independent firm, Money Concepts and their associates are committed to always represent the best interest of the client. It's really about independence coupled with committed benevolent interest, which means that they can represent your client, not a product supplier. It's not about selling products. It's about helping you achieve success. To learn how this can benefit you, contact John Adams at 737-867-9309. That's 737-867-9309 for more information.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Back in the studio here in Nashville, Tennessee, business side of music, the special edition of Between the Notes with co-contributor, because that's what you are now.
I love that, man. It's like I got this universal promotion.
You did.
Of importance
Yeah.
in the podcast industry.
And there's a salary that goes along with it.
Commensurate with my abilities.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes, it's
and,
fabulous.
I don't know where it's going to come from, but we'll figure it out.
Well, actually, I mean, I think you've got the money to pay me at the rate that we've signed my contract for. So,
look, let me get my money jar out. Doesn't make sense for acts to try and fill large venues, stadiums, arenas, or should they really think about playing smaller venues, creating a more intimate show? No, they're not going to make as much money,
right.
But the chance of selling out or at least having 3/4 capacity is much better than, having to cancel the show because of poor ticket sales. The cost of doing business, and this is where I put on my tour manager hat, it used to be that the agent would call the promoter and he would say, we have band XYZ, and this is how much we want for him. And after a little bit of bantering back and forth, the promoter and the agent agree on a price. It's good. At that point, it's determined what the tickets are going to cost to ensure that everybody gets paid. And the promoter makes their money, which the promoter, by the way, in case people don't know, they're taking the highest risk of everybody. They really are. They are probably at the pinnacle when it comes to investments. You look at an investment graph, it'd be a triangle, and concert promotions at the very top point of that. It's very difficult for them to make money. And then the tour manager, in their job, is to be calling the promoter every once in a while, or now we do it with email. How are ticket sales? I want a daily ticket count. Can you please send me what we're doing for that particular venue? And that is an excellent barometer of what to expect or what not to expect on the day of the show. I think the days of the strong walk-ups, I remember shows back when I was in high school, college age, it was, this is where I date myself. $6.50 in advance, $7.50 day of show.
At the door.
Yeah. Heck, I'm going to save that $1 and buy my ticket in advance.
Yeah.
And the poor schmo who maybe didn't have the $6.50 had to buy it at the door. Walk-ups were a little different then than they are now. The whole mindset these days is to sell out before the date happens. Now, you have bands, once again, Taylor Swift, Rolling Stones, Beyonce. Now, these secondary ticket sellers come in, and call them scalpers or brokerage houses, whatever you want to call them, and they're selling these tickets because if it's sold out, now that ticket's worth more than what the face value of it was. And, what might be a $300 ticket might now be a $750 or $1,000 ticket. And there's people that are willing to pay that. Why? I have no idea.
It beats me.
Yeah. And I see it a lot, especially in the Taylor Swift world. I saw where people were paying, some cases $5,000, $10,000 a ticket. Really? You can't think of something better to do with your money?
You know what? Hey, man, if that's what you want to do, go for it, right? If that's your market, if that's what the market will bear and you feel like doing it, I don't begrudge you doing it. It's a little silly to me, but, I'm sure there's things I do that are silly to the rich people that can burn money like that, but on the other side of the coin is, what's the value, right? So Taylor Swift, if she can, or not she, but if her ticket can be worth $1,000 in the secondary market, that's the value of the ticket. But if another act is trying to sell a $300 or a $200 ticket to an arena and they're not selling out, then you got to look at your value. You can't look at the audience as being the problem. You look at your value. What are you offering?
The audience is not the problem.
Right. And I don't mean to call out J-Lo, but I'm going to do it in a certain sense. If you're not able to sell these things out, then get over it and look at maybe what are you offering the audience? Is the audience obviously not thrilled to go see you, whereas Springsteen can still sell out because the whole point of going to a Springsteen show is to hear his catalog and see him play for 4 hours. It's a very specialized market. He's really lucky there happens to be a lot of people that want to do that, right?
And he's got such a deep catalog, he can pull that off.
Right. But if you're just doing the same dance routines at 50-something years old that you were doing at 20-something years old, there's a diminished market in that, It just is. And doesn't mean that you're not talented. It doesn't mean that you're not, beloved by your fans. It just means that you're having a little bit harder time getting people out of the house and into the arena. So to me, it's really a basic question of economics. Just nothing more than that.
Now let's talk about residencies for a minute, because that seems to be the new hot button topic. The Eagles are going to be doing a residency at the Sphere in Vegas. I think U2 either has or is going to do a residency. I've heard talk that what's the Grateful Dead these days, the Dead and Friends,
right.
They're going to pull off the same thing. Yet at the same time, J-Lo was going to do a residency at a casino, not at the Sphere, and she was offered $1 million a date for, I think, 90 dates. And then that offer was rescinded because it was determined she wasn't going to be able to put butts in the seats. That's
harsh, man.
That's a big pill to swallow.
Yeah, but that's the way the business works. And it's an ugly business, and it's an unfriendly business, and it tears people up and spits them out. And when they're done with you, they're done with you. But you look at like a band like U2, these guys are in their 60s by now. I'm sure there's a lot of arthritis and hip pains and things, creeping into each of the individual members. And hey, if you can pull off a residency like Aerosmith has done out there and so on and so forth, and get the people to come to you, more power to you.
Yeah.
It just might be the fact that the big tour is a thing of the past. Doesn't mean it's never going to come back. It just means that right now it's not happening.
So let me ask you, the big tour, because we've kind of been skirting around the water on that topic of conversation. Outside of the acts we've talked about, do you see the big tours or mega tours making a comeback? Because the economy, we really haven't fully recovered since the pandemic.
Sure.
And that's part of what our problem is these days. Do you see, from an economic standpoint, that we're going to have more stadium shows, or do you think we're going to have less?
I think we're absolutely going to have less. And, we have a more fractured entertainment market, so there's more tug on my entertainment dollar than there was, even 20 years ago. Young people are not as anthemic about their music as we were. And that doesn't mean that I'm better than them or they're better than me. It's just the generations have different priorities and different needs. Back in the day when, we were in our teens and 20s and 30s, there wasn't a whole lot else to do. So you put all your focus and your fanaticism and your entertainment dollar into music. That's not the way it works now. Sports has taken, things to a whole completely different level. And people are not as interested in the large community aspects of stuff. And I'm going to tell you, Bob, it's a pain in the ass to go to a show. And I don't care if you're my age or you're young, to get up, to get out of the house, to spend $100 for parking, to spend $50 for a couple of beers and sit there with people who don't know how to behave with their phones up in the air and dancing in front of you and taking pictures and talking during the entire show. Right? So, so we just have been kind of haranguing the artists that maybe it's not the audience's fault. But you know what, audience? I'm pointing my finger at you a little bit, too. Because quite frankly, even going to a movie theater, it's just not fun anymore because people are the reason why we can't have nice things. So to that point, I don't see that kind of I want to say society, that's not the best word, that kind of a culture coming back at all because we've had it.
Debbie and I went to a show to see Sinbad, the comedian.
Okay.
Who we absolutely love.
Funny dude, man.
Funny dude. And there were two ladies sitting behind us the whole night having a conversation and taking phone calls and making phone calls. And I'm thinking, we spent whatever X dollars to go see this and park and go out to dinner and try and have a nice, a date night.
Right.
And you're right. There's almost an education that needs to be given to society. Yeah. Because first of all, the experience, as you said, of seeing a live performance can be challenging enough. Now throw in that societal factor. Right. Please, could you take your phone out of my face? That type of thing.
It's ridiculous. My daughter bought my wife tickets to TPAC, Tennessee Performing Arts Center in Nashville. This is several years back, and it was, I don't know if it was The Sound of Music or it was something that my wife and my daughter just felt this would be a lovely thing to go together to go see, right? Could have been at the Schermerhorn, which for those of you who are not in the Nashville area is like the classical symphony hall here. The point I'm trying to make about
you actually dress up to go to the Schermerhorn.
You wear a jacket if you're a guy, right? Okay, so if I set the stage here, this is, so...
And I think you would almost wear a jacket going to TPAC.
Yeah, absolutely, I do. Yeah, absolutely, I do. So my wife and daughter sit at their seats, and they send me a picture of this woman who was in her 50s, Bob. She's not like a little kid, with her shoes off and her foot crossed, like so her left foot, if you can imagine this, was up on her knee. So my daughter was sitting right to the right, and she's actually picking her toenails. Okay? And just completely unironically giving herself a pedicure right before the show. Okay, those people should not be allowed out of the house, but unfortunately, we let them out, so that means I'm staying home. So there's something to be said for the audience not understanding what that experience is anymore. We don't know how to go out.
It's much like flying. When I was in the business, both tour managing and then working for a record label, there were times I would fly 3, 4, 5 times a week.
Yeah.
It was just the business. It's what you did. You didn't wear pajamas and a T-shirt and Crocs when you got on a plane. You actually dressed a little nicer.
And you know what happens when you dress a little nicer, which is why I still dress kind of nicely on an airplane? You get treated a little better. So we're in Heathrow. I'm in Heathrow, coming back a month ago. And so Heathrow to Nashville is the flight on British Airways. And I wound up sitting in the same row. I'm not going to go into all the gory details, but at the end of the day, it was this young ingenue singer, and you could tell that she just thought she was somebody and something, and she was going to be a rock star and whatever, and her manager, okay, sitting on the plane. Well, what they did during the plane, first they were obnoxious as all could be, okay, while we're on the plane, but then they each had an earbud in their ear, and they started singing this girl's song, okay, loudly. And you all know that when you put an earbud in, that's not your voice looping in to monitor you, you're singing off key. So they're literally shrieking, right? And the flight attendant came up and he's like, you got to keep it down. Like, he wasn't even nice. He didn't even say please. He was like, you got to keep it down. And they kept singing. And he says, I told you once, I'm not going to tell you again. You got to stop. And they got a little bit of a very, very polite British round of applause. You know, nobody knows how to go out in public anymore because everybody thinks everything is Facebook. Everybody thinks that, like, you know, I'm going to post something and I'm going to get, 14 likes on this thing, and everybody's going to think I'm funny as hell, and I'm going to pick my toenails at T-Pack because it's what I feel like doing.
I'm surprised she didn't video herself doing it.
Right. Well, right. Exactly. Look what I'm doing, kids. Right. It's my Instagram moment. And again, I'm not spending $1,000 to go out and subject myself to that nonsense when I can sit at home and listen to music or have a nice chat with my wife or visit friends and have a nice time. So, you got a lot of problems right now if you're an artist trying to sell out arenas. You've got a lot of problems you got to deal with.
We're going to take another break, get another word in for a couple more of our sponsors, and when we come back, we're going to have some more conversation with Jack Sharkey.
You're listening to the business side of music.
This is Mark Allen Barnett, singer, songwriter, creative coach, and mentor. Are you an artist or songwriter or a family member or friend of someone who is? Are you trying to find your way through the often confusing world of today's music business? I'm here to help. Over the past 40 years, I've written and recorded hit songs, have had more than my share of live performances, and have seen the ups and downs of the music industry and what Music City, also known as Nashville, has to offer. I'm here to share that information with you. The Mark Allen Barnett Songwriting Tours of Nashville are a one-day to multi-day private interactive workshops developed to help you discover your best approach to songwriting, performing in front of a live audience, along with the correct way to network within the music industry. Our workshops are based around what you need to know. While in Nashville, you get an insight from behind the scenes, learn about the history of Music City, separate fact from fiction, and give yourself or a loved one the time of your life. This workshop makes the perfect gift for someone you love who wants to get their foot in the door of the music business the right way. For more information, go to www.markallenbarnett.com or www.musicchoosesyou.com. Remember, you don't choose music. Music chooses you.
Are you a fan of 80s and 90s country? Then check out Throwback Country Music, a weekly nationwide show hosted by me, Britt Jones. I have exclusive interviews with legends and icons that include Grammy Award winners and Grand Ole Opry stars. You can listen to the show wherever you get your podcast or watch it on our YouTube channel or our Facebook page. For more info and access to these options, visit our website at throwbackcountrymusic.com. That's throwbackcountrymusic.com.
You're listening to the business side of music.
Back in the studio here in Nashville, Tennessee, Business Side of Music, the special edition of Between the Notes with co-contributor Jack Sharkey. Here's another bone I have to pick, which makes it difficult for me to go to a show.
Okay.
And you can relate to this.
Okay.
Okay, because you have
hearing loss.
You have hearing loss.
Right.
And I went to a show, Debbie and I went to a show a while back to see, I'll call him a buddy. He's not really a friend, but we've worked together in the past, and he's a drummer for a major act. Well, he has another band. And we went to Cannery Row, which is another venue, very nice venue.
Love Cannery Row.
Here in Nashville. Yeah. And the volume, the sheer volume of the show was so ear-splitting, piercing, that I had to go literally down a stairwell just to get a reprieve. And I think I'm going to throw that on the artist. I'm going to throw that on the act, because now it might have been a house sound guy, might have been the band sound guy, but there's no reason for that. It had to have been 120 dB, and I've got a dB meter on my phone. I didn't check it. Of course I have a dB meter on my phone, because that's what I like to annoy people. Oh, look, you're taking pictures?
See, I don't look at it as annoying. I look at it as nerding out, because that's why I use my dB meter.
Yeah, I'm not taking pictures. I'm not social media-ing here. I'm checking the volume, the SPL. So that's another one of those contributions that acts seem to unwittingly or maybe unknowingly make to prevent someone such as myself to want to go see a show. I want to have a nice, relaxing, enjoyable time. Now, I'm of the age, and the Cannery is SRO, standing room only.
That's a young person's club for sure.
And I will go and seek out one of the 12 stools, that are there, or I'll go sit outside on the patio, because I can't stand for 2 hours. I'm not going to stand for 2 hours. If I was in my 20s back in the day when I saw the Guess Who, or I saw Santana, or I saw all of these great acts, of course I would stand, because that's what we all did. But at my age, once again, I'm going to bitch about the price of parking.
Right.
Don't make me spend $30-$40 and then expect me to stand for 2 hours.
And that the need for things to be at maximum volume all the time. It's just this thing because we can make things as loud as we make them, so we just do. The audience is also a little bit too over expectant of volume. They don't understand, that they can have a good time and not be sort of deafened by that. I see that in the home theater, or in the home audio end of the business too, where you get a perfectly fine stereo that's something even 10 or 15 years ago you would have been like, wow, dude, that's like an amazing sound system. But because it's not pumping out 20 or 30 hertz, and making your chest vibrate in your living room, and it's not a worthy sound system. So again, the audience has some culpability to that too, because of the demands of that. But it's up to the artist to say, this is how I want to present my music. This is how I want to present my soul and my emotion and my storytelling to you. And, deal with it. Like, come with me on this journey. Be a leader, artist, and say, this is how I want you best to understand my music. So let's recap why shows are not working maybe the way they were. They're far too expensive. They're really expensive, and they're very expensive. Those are the first three things. Then you've got, are you giving me something new here? What are you selling me, right? For everybody that's a starving artist, as a writer like myself, or a musician or something, what you're trying to do in this industry is sell people stuff that they don't want, and you're trying to make them want it, right? So if I'm trying to sell 70,000 people something that only 10,000 people want, that's my market, man.
Yeah.
That's it. That's my market.
That's your niche.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you better understand that you're blessed to have 10,000 people, because there's a lot of musicians who are probably way more talented than you, whoever we're talking about, who, for whatever reasons, decisions they've made or whatever it is in their life, they're lucky if they sell 100 tickets to a show, right? So you've got that. You've got the enormous insurance and liability costs and all of that stuff that goes on. Audience expectations of having a giant show, having the volume and stuff, and then the fact that people are generally rude and not fun to be around anymore. And yeah, I kind of get it. I kind of get it. Which brings me to our sort of pet peeve for today that you mentioned was the outdoor show. And just recently, Foo Fighters at Citi Field in New York trying to replicate the Beatles experience at the old Shea Stadium. What happened with that one?
Well, first of all, let me preface that by saying somebody, I think, had posted a picture. It was a New York Post article. I don't remember. And they posted a picture of the parking fee, the ticket, the receipt that they got, the stub. And it said on there, rain or shine. Okay. Well, most acts, and I think the Foo Fighters, I commend them for it, they would probably put the show on rain or shine, you know. But when electricity in the sky gets involved,
Gets to be a problem.
Yeah, you know, I don't want to be standing in an outdoor show when there's thunder and lightning because I don't want to be electrocuted in front of 50,000 people that I don't even know.
Yeah, and worse even than that is, let's say some guy 50 rows away from you gets shocked and it just transfers to me and then I get it.
Yeah.
Like that was his problem. Now it becomes my problem.
And that can't happen.
Another reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the reasons I always liked sheds. I always liked outdoor amphitheaters because a good part of them were covered. The stage was covered. A lot of the reserve seating was covered. Pity those people that were out on the grassy knoll.
Right.
But they could always, you know, seek shelter underneath the shed. Outdoor shows, they don't have the excitement for me that they used to.
Okay.
You know, I don't necessarily, I think if someone gave me a pair of tickets and said, hey, so-and-so is going to be playing at name an outdoor venue, the Greek or the Hollywood Bowl or Pine Knob or, you know, Jones Beach. Yeah, I may or may not go. But I am going to factor in, I used to call it the snow factor. When I was a road manager, I had a band that I was road managing. There was 6 guys in the band. And we would leave to get on the road at a certain time, knowing that we could be at the venue in plenty of time to set up and do whatever we need to do. Well, I would always add, we're either going to leave the night before or we're, you know, midnight, whatever it is. And they would say, why are we doing this? This is ridiculous. Well, it's the snow factor. Bob, it's the middle of June. Yes, it is. It's the snow factor. We had to go over Interstate 80 from Sacramento, California to Reno, Nevada, Donner Summit, the middle of June. We got caught in a blizzard, and that's where we sat for 12 hours. That was the last those guys ever complained about my snow factor analogy. Playing outdoors, whether it's a county fair or it's a rodeo or it's a shed or it's a stadium, I'm going to want to go to the smaller venues. I like here in Nashville, I like the Ryman. Seats aren't exactly comfortable, but it's not. They're church pews.
But
okay?
boy, it sounds fantastic.
Or I'll go to 3rd and Lindsley. Or I'll go to the listening room. Wherever I can see a decent act for a decent price. And 3rd and Lindsley I love because they have food.
Yeah.
You know, so now you can order off the menu. Parking's across the street. Not bad. And the bands that play at those types of venues, the acts that play at those types of venues can fill them up.
Right.
And that's, I think, where that whole ego gets into play. Perform at venues that you can fill comfortably, consistently, and everybody can have a good time.
And feasibly, economically, where you can make some bread and you can pay your people and you can afford to do it again, which, you know, the economy of scale, as we mentioned in the opening, has changed. And there's not as many concert dollars being spent. There's just not as much money, so the pie is smaller. So now you have, by ego, you have a smaller pie, and people are trying to force that pie to be 10 times as large as it is right now.
And it's just not going to happen.
Right, because that's what they feel that they deserve. Well, you don't deserve that because you're not filling it up. So move on. It's no shade on your talent or your catalog or your ability to dance or whatever it happens to be. It's basically an economic statement that not as many people are willing to spend the money. That's the end of it.
You're seeing it a lot with country acts, classic rock acts who used to fill large venues, who are now playing large clubs or small theaters, 12, 1,500 seat, maybe 2,000 seat theaters. And they're maybe at 3/4 capacity, if not sold out, and they're quite content doing it.
So isn't the arc of being an artist just that? It's particularly a musical artist. You start out in a sweaty club. I know a band that just drove from here to Chicago and played in front of 12 people.
Ooh.
Right? I mean,
Been there, done that.
Right? But that's the arc, and then you with some luck and some talent and some grace, now you're doing 100-seaters and you're doing 1,500 and then you're doing 3,000 and you're doing 20,000, and then you're starting to go back, slope down on the other side again.
Yeah.
That's a natural life cycle.
It is.
So accept that for what it is. If you're in your 50s, you're not the same talent. You are the same talent, but you're not the same performer. That's what I really want to say.
Unless you're Mick Jagger.
Unless you're Mick Jagger, or to a lesser extent Bruce Springsteen, which I just don't get it. Even Billy Joel. We watched the show back in the spring that CBS completely messed up on,
right,
out of Madison Square Garden. Billy Joel is a songwriting god and a piano-playing wonder, right? But he's not the Billy Joel that I saw on television in April that he was when I saw him in Philadelphia in 1980. He's not the same Billy Joel. That doesn't mean that he's a bad Billy Joel. It just means he's a 70-something-year-old Billy Joel.
He's older, wiser, a little more seasoned. Yeah.
Let it go. I giggle sometimes. I have this really strange love-hate relationship with The Who because, right, first of all, it's not really The Who anymore. It's just two guys that can't stand each other that spent their money unwisely and need to go and make money. Sorry, guys. Sorry, Pete and Raj. That's what I feel about you, okay? But they're carrying on like they're, like it's Live at Leeds or something. And then there's another thing that comes into this, Bob, that I hadn't really thought about until now, but it's a major pet peeve of mine, is a 60-year-old singing a song, that he wrote or she wrote when they were 20 with the same lust and passion and worldview and stuff that they had as a 20-year-old. It's kind of creepy after a while, right? It's kind of creepy. And you've got to take that into account, too, that maybe people don't want to see some old dude being creepy, a couple of acts notwithstanding from that. But, boy, this is a lot of onion layers on this whole entire topic.
Before we close out, Debbie and I saw, I'm just not going to say his name, but legend in the rock and roll business. And we saw him maybe 10 years ago. And he would perform a song, and then he would turn around, and on the drum riser would be an inhaler, and he'd take a couple puffs, and he'd go back and sing again. Same thing with Roger Daltrey. We saw that he was hitting the oxygen tank.
My son and daughter-in-law just went to see a really well-known late 80s female dance singer act that had her heyday. She may or may not have been a judge on a certain singing competition show in the early 2000s, and she was spot on doing her thing, but she had to go hit the oxygen tank after every note. That's like a real bummer to me. Like, I know a lot of people who have to live that way. It's not that entertaining to me at this point. It's kind of like, oh, that's really very mortal of you, and I don't necessarily know if I want to be reminded of my mortality at a rock and roll show.
It becomes geriatric.
Right? We're all approaching that on our own speed. We don't need to have our icons. And just to close up real quick and circle back on The Who, it's time. And there does come a time where maybe you're just not as vibrant as you were 50 years ago. And maybe you need to kind of think about it that way the next time you complain that you can't put a road show out to go to all the football stadiums in the country.
Here's a shout out to our loyal listeners. Without all of you, we would not be one of the most listened to music interview podcasts, including achieving #1 status in many countries around the world, according to Apple Podcasts. If you enjoy our show, please, please, please check out our Facebook page at the Business Side of Music Podcast. Don't forget to subscribe and definitely hit the like button. We are always posting new things that we're doing here in the studio. While you're at it, go to our page on YouTube and click on the Business Side of Music Podcast to subscribe. You can check out our video webcast there and get to see me and our guests in the studio, along with Buddy the Music Dog, who is floating around here somewhere today.
Yeah, I don't know if this topic necessarily was his cup of tea.
Could not be. Yeah,
right.
Yeah.
You know.
He's picky.
Yeah. And I just want to say, before I go, Bob, first of all, always it's a real honor and a pleasure. And I just have a blast coming up here. But I do want to make sure that I say this publicly so people don't think that I'm a schmo. I did buy you a red telephone booth from London. I did buy it.
Yeah.
Okay. I got the small version that I could fit into my suitcase, and you could put your pennies in it when you want to save them up. But right now, it's sitting on my dresser at home. I'll get it to you someday.
That's a good place for it to be.
Yes, as a gift for you. I'll just keep it.
That I was going to drop coins in that. That was going to be your salary.
See, so it always winds up coming back to be something that affects me in the end.
I just want you to know. Last but not least, check us out and follow us on X, which used to be Twitter, at Biz Music Podcast. Jack, always a pleasure, and thank you for being a co-contributor on
Love
the
it,
show.
man. Absolutely love it. Appreciate you much. We'll see you next month.
The Business Side of Music is the creation of Tom Sabella and Tracy Snow and is produced by Bob Bender. The Business Side of Music is recorded at Music Dog Studios in Nashville, Tennessee. Production sound design by Keith Stark. Voiceover and promo by Lisa Busan.